Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of No Reserve, Hagerty's podcast about the enthusiast car market. Now, we're here to help you make sense of the market, whether you're buying, selling, or just watching. Okay, $51 million. That's what a Ferrari just sold for. It's the second highest price paid for a car at an auction. In this episode, we'll bring you all the background behind that huge sale, plus a whole host of cars that the rest of us can afford. I'm Larry Webster, editor of Hagerty Media, and I'm joined by Dave Kinney, the publisher of the Hagerty Price Guide. Between the two of us, we've got decades of experience buying, selling, and driving the cars we love. Plus, we don't just guess at the values, we're backed up by the data of the Hagerty valuation tools. Okay, let's get into it. All right, Dave, we're talking on Wednesday, November 15th. We're just 2 days after some really big news in the car world. Would you explain what I'm talking about?
Oh, there's this little thing called the Ferrari GTO. Perhaps you've heard of it?
Yes, I've heard of it.
Yeah, and one of them sold this week in New York City. It was a Sotheby's sale. Now, RM and Sotheby's are related, but this was a sale that was done at Sotheby's headquarters, and this is all in the middle of Art Week, which is important. And the car reached the highest price ever paid for a Ferrari at auction, and that was $51.7 million. And
Whoa.
I watched it, live on the live stream. Did you see it?
I didn't watch it. I mean, this was such an anticipated auction. We all knew this GTO was coming up, and they only built, 36 of these cars, if memory serves?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, they're the highest coveted Ferrari. Is that a crazy statement, or you say it's true?
It's true. Right now, and things change, but it's been that way for a long, long time. This was built as a 330LM/250 GTO, and that's another little bit of the story here. I did watch it live. There were 10 bids. It mostly went in $2 million increments until close to the end.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit anticlimactic. I mean, they got the job done. There's no doubt about it, but there was no, breathtaking moments in the sale to me.
Okay. Dave, could we look at a GTO as it's a weird car to use as a bellwether for the classic car market because in my view, because so few are made, but enough were made. It's not like there are 5 of these things. There's 36 of them. And so I've often wondered why these are essentially the most valuable series production car in the car world, right?
Yeah, I mean, it gets you to be a member of a club with, people whose names own GTOs. Of course, Nick Mason of Pink Floyd owns one. I mean, a whole bunch of other people. And they take these things out, and like every 5 years, they'll do a tour with the cars, which is just absolutely amazing. You've got, $50 million cars, $60 million, $70 million cars, and they're all out on the road. At the same time. But it's think of it as the most expensive car country club that you could ever enter, and you need one of these cars to be a member of that club.
Well, in the canon of Ferrari history, the 250 GTO is an important car because it came right after this thing called the 250 short wheelbase,
right?
And it had a number of technological improvements. It changed the oiling system of the car so they could lower the engine in it, and it had a little bit longer with a more aerodynamic body shape, which especially comparatively to anything else there, these things are gorgeous. But it's also the last front-engine racing Ferrari. But on the factory, this wasn't really a factory race car; it was a customer race car, right?
Well, factory and customer, I guess. There's, you have to read the history, and the history on these things are always a little
nuanced.
Always a little nuanced, right? So each one is a little different, and every car is different because even though there's 30 some odd cars out there, everyone has a different history. Some won major races, or some were privateer raced. This was apparently campaigned by the factory. And there were, a bunch of differences. Some of the cars are completely recreated because they were in a really bad accident. And when I say completely recreated, I'm mostly talking about the body. And they were race cars, so having the original engine isn't something that's guaranteed in a race car. You swap it out when you need it. So I think that the biggest thing is that they're just so painfully beautiful. I think that they're so easy on the eyes, so beautiful, graceful lines that flow from the start to the finish. And so, and this became the most expensive Ferrari ever sold at auction. Now, the caveat on that is that we are almost certain that other ones have sold for more money, but not at auction. And we find that all the time. These private treaty, that's what they're called, private treaty sales sometimes exceed the auction price.
Right.
So, we're not privy to them. We don't know that, Bob Jones and Doug Smith just swapped cars until it happens that we see Doug Smith driving Bob Jones's old GTO. And so there's a lot of speculation there. So, it's more speculation than anything else. And because these cars are so popular, just like in the art market, when it's sold privately, you really don't know how much it went for.
But it's always fun because they're going to fetch a big number. That private sale number is rumored to be 80 million for one of these, right?
Yeah.
I think they're hugely coveted, and let me have a hypothesis. I think this is the end of the most romantic era in Ferrari's history, right? Because right after the war, Enzo Ferrari hires Colombo to design a V12. He designs it. That engine serves Ferrari throughout the 50s, where he's winning Formula One and sports car races and really establishing his name as this premier builder of high-performance automobiles. And then everybody caught up to him. So by the 60s, he's really got competition from the Ford GT40, all the companies in Britain. So that this GTO was the last front-engine kind of basic architecture similar that lasted through the 50s. This was the last of that breed. Do you buy that?
Yeah, this was the end of the origin story for Ferrari. After this, after this, it goes into regular production, and the cars that they sold to customers, the non-race cars become more important going forward because, I think Ferrari, it's generally well known that he would prefer not to have built production cars, apparently. He just needed the money to go racing. And so, that's part of that. I will say we got to caveat it with one more thing that you're not thinking about yet.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. How about this? The Ferrari movie is coming out.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, it's going to be out very shortly. And the early word is that it is the best automotive movie of all time.
Yeah, I've heard
so
if
that hits hard, and I mean hard, and it becomes, well, you remember Ford versus Ferrari. I mean, your aunt was talking about it. Your uncle went and saw it, who doesn't know anything about cars. If this becomes a movie like that, I think that it's a Katie bar the door for some of these, and not necessarily going to make a difference in GTO prices, but it'll make a difference in some of the production car prices and raise the kind of front of mind thought process. You're right. Stature with the public. So we'll see what happens.
Well, it's fascinating too because of the 36, they're actually split into Series 1 and Series 2 cars.
Right,
and
right.
That were built from 62 to 64. This is a 62, so it's a Series 1, which is much more beautiful, I think, than the Series 2, which had a sort of camback, and it was the squatter for better aerodynamics. So the Series 1, I believe, are the more valuable of the two, yeah?
Yeah, I think the world agrees with that the Series 1 is the most valuable, but this did have a 330 engine in it, as opposed to the 250 engine. And the 250 engine, like you were just saying, was the legendary engine. The 330, a brand extension, basically. And there's nothing wrong with the 330 engine, and there's nothing in the world wrong with the 250 engine. But I like 250 short wheelbases. They're available for, 1/4 of the price, something like that, or even less.
Yeah, they're gorgeous.
And they're also a very good-looking car, but it's not quite the exclusive club that the GTO club is.
So, the way they sold this car at Art Week was really interesting because I think not too long before this Ferrari sale, a Picasso sold for $139 million. It's a painting, right?
Yeah, and you can't even drive it. What are these people thinking?
And so every time I think these GTO prices are out of whack, I look at that and I'm like, well, maybe it's not so out of whack. I mean, geez,
Yeah, I know. I mean, back in the day, it was like some piece of furniture that sold for the same price as a GTO when GTOs were $12 million or something like that. And you're going, okay, I think I know which one I'd prefer, but it's just the way of the world, I guess, because the art world leads it all. But I'd rather have one GTO than a room full of NFTs. How's that?
Well, I mean, I think you just spoke to it earlier. This Ferrari movie's coming out. There's going to be a lot of attention, especially on that era of Ferrari in the 50s. I think with a car like this, where and how it's sold, I don't think it matters, right? Because the people who have the money they already know about the GTO. So if it's sold, they auctioned it after the movie. I don't know if it would have changed the price or if it was at a bigger auction for more cars. I mean, tell me, what am I wrong?
Well, I mean, this was a big auction because everybody knew about it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, and New York's hardly a hard place to get to. So I think that I don't know where the car sold. We don't have any idea yet
Yeah.
whether it's sold to North America or somewhere else. But in the meantime, it's a big deal because it was the most expensive Ferrari sold at auction. But you do have to caveat it with the fact that we're almost positive that more have sold at higher prices.
So if we could look at how this is or is not a measure of the broader market, for the past few episodes we've been discussing, like, there are great deals out there. It's really becoming a good time to buy. What this tells me, this sale it's a really strong number, $50 million is sort of confirms what you're always telling me, which is that these blue chip cars are unaffected by the rest of the market. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, they're in a little bit different of a tax structure than you and me, I would think, the people who buy these cars. It's one of those things where there's only a few handfuls of people in the world who have the desire to buy it and the money to buy it. I think almost everybody who's a car person would, when educated about the car, would have the desire to buy it, but very few people have the money. Now, I will say, interestingly, that RM did have a figure of 60 million on this car prior to the sale. It was part of their advertising that
Figure for what? Like what it should go for?
For what
Oh
I
yeah,
guess
but they always
their
put a
pre-sale
stretch
estimate.
goal in there, don't they?
Yeah. I mean, hey, I would. I mean,
Yeah.
you're not going to say, we're thinking more than 30 million. I mean, when it's not going to be that.
Mhm.
So yes, I mean, there's nothing wrong. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. And I don't think this can be interpreted as a sign of a hot market or
Right.
a calm market or a slowing down or cooling market at all. I think this is this is kind of a separate car. This is like,
The blue chip.
when all the houses in in Ann Arbor are selling for $850,000 and one sells for $14 million, it doesn't mean that your $850,000 house is worth more or less. They're in a different marketplace.
Yeah, the Hagerty, you guys in the valuation team, you actually have a blue chip index because
Yep.
these cars are separate from the rest of the car market. Cars like the GTO,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
So I think
I would say
Oh.
if you're looking for a car to track, if you had to have one single car, it'd be the 300 SL.
Yeah.
Either the Gullwing or the Roadster, because they're now tracking very similar in terms of prices. I'd go with the Gullwing because I'm old school.
Yeah.
But if I had to own just one, I'd probably own a Roadster. So, but in the meantime, I think that's the car that probably is the best market watcher of all. From basically $1 million to $2 million for restored cars is right now where we're talking. Sometimes less, sometimes more. So they're not obtainable by any stretch of the imagination. But if you enter the world of $1 million cars, you've got a hell of a lot more people who have the potential wherewithal to buy it.
Yeah. Well, let's move on, Dave. It's certainly fascinating. I hope the new owner gets out and enjoys this car. It's what else do you say? It's gorgeous. Let's move on to our opening bid segment. This is where we talk about cars that have previously sold. I want to start with this one that you highlighted that sold on the Hagerty marketplace because it's a complete 180 from that Ferrari. It's a 1929 Ford Model A. It's a wood wagon. And Dave, what struck me about this thing was it sold for $17,000, which I thought was, I mean, it's fascinating to me that people are still buying these things and ratcheting up the prices. Does that it got more than I thought it would.
I think it got more than I thought it would too. But a depot hack is one of those things. A depot hack is okay. So it's basically the grandfather of the station wagon,
Yeah.
which means it's the great grandfather of the SUV. So, which I guess means the great great grandfather of the CUV, right? But anyhow, these were kind of utilitarian vehicles. They were called depot hacks because you could drive them to the train depot and pick up your chickens or your passengers or whatever and put them in. Not exactly an air-conditioned comfort, but it was a great way to store people and cars and bring them around. This was an early one, a 29, Model A. Decent looking car. There's nothing wrong with it. 17 is pretty good money for these. But the depot hack, I think, is one of the more desirable body styles. It's all wood. Not the most complicated wooden body by any stretch of the imagination. This is something that a couple of very talented carpenters could put together if they wanted to. But I guess it's one of the ultimate fun cars in the old car world, because it puts a smile on everybody's face when it drives by.
Well, it proves the notion that we say, like, okay, as generations move on and the cars of our youth get newer, right? Like, I'm Gen X, so as we talk about 80s era's cars are going to appeal to my generation. In general, there's exceptions. It doesn't mean the cars built before that fall off a cliff value-wise. They sort of reach a floor, and they have an intrinsic value. And that's what this Model A proves to me, is that, wow, okay, there's not many people still around or buying cars that grew up with this Model A on the road.
Well, there are no original owners left. That's for darn sure.
That's for sure.
So might have been if they bought it when they were a 1-year-old, but that's about it.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, this shows that there are still people. I mean, they built 15 million Model A's. Okay, I mean that's quite a few. And when you consider there were so many less people in the United States and on the planet back then,
good point.
That was a very good portion of the population, who bought Model A's. So there are a lot of people who have memories of a family Model A, but that's about it. But yeah, you're right. I mean, these things are not easy to drive. I mean, they're not as hard to drive as the earlier cars, the Model Ts, for example. But this is not a car you want to get in and drive cross country. Famously, Hagerty had, the 365 days of A, if you remember that project from well over 10 years ago, where one of the Hagerty people got in it and drove it as a daily for an entire year. And, there were some challenging times when the snow fell, but, but in the springtime, it's a perfect car because it's basically an open air car, convertible as much as you want and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, these things are incredibly versatile. They're the cockroaches of the car world. When everything else dies, they'll still be there.
They'll still be Model A's.
Right. And there'll still be somebody who can fix them. And keep in mind, these were designed to be, fixed on the farm, on a table in the barn. Exactly. So, we don't have to worry about rebuilding the engine in a clean room. We just need a place where there's, not straw and flies. Okay. So
yeah. Oh, by the way, funny you mentioned it. We just ran a piece on an outfit that there's actually people casting new blocks for Model A's, engine blocks.
I did not know that. That's really cool.
Because they get porous, they age, and they stop. They're just going to seep oil. So these people are casting them. So even a car this old still has a lot of value and a lot of interest. And 7,600 people went to this Hagerty auction, and I mean that brought all the eyeballs. That enough people bid it up to this price, which again, great. I mean, it's great for all of us that love this hobby, but let's move on. What's the next car on your list that you'd like to talk about?
Oh, let's see. Can we go up one to where we have the 64 Imperial Crown convertible that's sold at Las Vegas?
Car I know nothing about. Great. Excellent.
Okay. Dude. Yeah, great. Well, then I'll talk a lot and you can just listen. How many, let's play a little game here. You don't know this answer and you're going to be wrong no matter what. And I'm not expecting you to know this answer because I think this one blew me away.
Okay.
1964 Imperial Crown convertible. Notice I didn't say Chrysler Imperial Crown convertible because Imperial was chasing, or you could say leading if you wanted to, Continental, who at one point was its own division, but then went back to being Lincoln Continental, and Cadillac at this point. So this was the third choice. If you were shopping a Caddy, if you were shopping a Continental, this was your third choice.
Wait, Dave, can I bring that to the modern day? This was like to Chrysler as Lexus is to Toyota.
There you go. That's exactly right. So how many of these do you think they built in 1964, the Imperial Crown convertible?
Oh, wow. I'm going to say 10,000.
That would have been my initial thought. How about if I told you it was less than a tenth of that? 922 of these.
Get out.
And then when the years go by 67, they're almost in the single digits with these things. There were so few of these things made. This one sold for $16,500. Now, I didn't see the car in person, but I looked at the pictures pretty clearly. I hate the top. The top does not fit well. But everything else, it's green with a green interior, something you never see in today's age. I think this was a stinking great buy. 47,000 miles. Of course, you can't rely on an odometer from, 1964 really well, because it might have been fixed or it might have been broken or who the hell knows. But anyhow, great lines. I think these things, they don't rival the Continental, because I think the Continental would win, but they were
Win
they
what?
were in a beauty contest.
Oh, okay.
I think a Continental, and of course the Continental had the top that's stored in the trunk at this era. So, but for this kind of money, what a great cruiser. And I might add, there's room for you and all of your friends, because like 6, 7 people can fit in these things.
Oh, it's super cool. I mean, I like thinking about this is 64. It's got no tail fins. It's very much a 60s kind of Mad Men era crisp line design. And just 4 years ago, right, the Eldorado had these massive 50s tail fins. So how quick design was evolving back at this time,
And you
it's
win
amazing.
again, because there was a 64 Imperial in Mad Men, the TV
No
show.
way, really?
Yeah, right. Our protagonist in that drove a 64 Imperial for a short period of time. So,
Ah,
yeah, it is a real madman car, and this was, you're absolutely right
that's
again,
cool.
because the Eisenhower era, where
Hmm.
everybody wore hats and had
Yeah.
a suit on and all that sort of stuff, quickly gave way to the Kennedy era, where all that was gone, and the fins went with it. So fins were 50s, and these kind of clean, edgy lines were totally 1960s.
Now, the interesting thing about this car, one of the reasons I think it's such a reasonable price, and it again highlights all these interesting machines you can get for not a lot of money, is mechanically it's Chrysler. So the parts are probably out there and available. But if you ever get in a wreck and you start bending this trim and it's toast, you're in a little bit of hurt, aren't you?
Yeah, well, with only 922 built, let's just say they made an extra 100 of the pieces of trim after that,
Yeah.
something like that, or 200. Yeah, it's going to be rough. The good news is there seems to always be a 64 Imperial convertible for sale. I saw one that
Really?
sold recently for 45 grand, a much nicer one, and I see them out there
Huh.
at this same kind of price, which I just think is just outrageously great price for this
Oh,
also Mad Men, but also, of course, mid-century modern look,
yeah, that's
in great
amazing.
mid-century colors. I mean, green with
Beautiful
green. Come
colors.
on, that's
Yeah.
great colors.
What a yeah. Thanks for highlighting that. I mean, it's I see all the reasons. I'm gonna have to agree with you, which I don't like to do, but I want to move on to the car that's like the running. It's my personal running joke in the auction world, and that's the Toyota Land Cruiser.
Oh yeah,
Tell us about
yeah.
this one that you. Yeah.
So, for those uninitiated, the Toyota Land Cruiser was one of those cars, and I'm going to have to say it's 15 years ago now, and it's probably about right, that went from nowhere to hero like overnight. All of a sudden, you'd see these things at every auction after a few of them sold for 70 and 80, and then $100,000. Now, the
It's
Land
insane.
Cruiser, again, we're talking, the 70s version of the cockroach. You can't kill them. They're great build
You can kill
quality.
them. You can rust them to nothing in 6 months.
Well, yeah, you live in Michigan, so I guess that's possible. But you're not going to kill the engine. You're not going to kill the chassis. It's really well over engineered in a great Toyota way. But anyhow, these things went up so high and so fast, and then everybody went out and restored them. And then all of a sudden, when they come on the marketplace, there's not 300 people who wanted to buy one year. There's maybe 100 people or 150 people, so the price goes down. This one, a completely restored car, not restored to the absolute nines, in my opinion, and with they put a jerry can on the side of it, which I think takes away from the look of the car.
Oh,
I would have put it on the back, but that's all personal preference. Sold for under 30 grand, 28.6. Come on.
yeah. So these have really taken a tumble, is what you're saying, over the last 5 years, haven't they?
Yeah, and of course, there's different body styles, and this is not the most popular. It's got the canvas soft top and canvas doors, but dune beige, the normal color
They're
you
all
see these
beige.
things
Yeah.
in. Yeah, I know, they almost all are. But somebody spent a lot of money on this, and this is the way you want to buy one. Sadly, you wanna be the guy who, buys somebody else's restoration, and I think this has got a long, long time to go on it for the next owner.
Yeah, the thing that always amazed me about those high prices, I mean, these are essentially like they're bare, like they sort of have barely crawled out of the ooze of a farm field. Like they're so tractorish, right? I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
it's like forget about going on the highway with these things. Like it's just coffee runs and maybe cars and coffee. Like unless you have a ranch, then you're good.
Oh yeah, and it's a great multi-purpose vehicle. I mean, once again, you can drive around town in it and look cool doing it, and also put stuff in the back. And of course, they almost all have a trailer hitch on them. I would think this one does. I yeah, sure it does. So it's got a Class 3 hitch on it. Looks like maybe Class 2 hitch, and it's all good to go. So you can haul stuff. It is a utility vehicle, as they say, and of course, 4-wheel drive.
Yeah, somebody bought something, I think had a really good buy there. But I mean, as an off-road vehicle, I want to segue into our next one, which I'm super interested to talk about because, of course, this car was on our bull market list last year. And I want to see what it did. This is a 2006 Hummer H1. This is the military or civilian version of the military Hummer. Arnold Schwarzenegger drove one. Dave, how did this one do?
Are you sitting down, Larry?
Yes.
$231,000.
You're kidding me.
No. This is a 2006 Hummer H1 with 10,510 miles. Sold at the Mecum auction. By the way, these last 3 cars, this car and the previous 2, were all at the Mecum auction in Las Vegas, the right place to be at an auction because it's so hot out. But anyhow, yeah, $231,000.
I mean, I just don't.
Are you still there? You still there?
Well, here's where I'm like, we are brilliant because this is a car, our bull market list. What we try and do, right, is
Sure.
you, me, a whole bunch of us, we get together, we look at all the data, and we try and give people an idea of cars that they can buy that aren't going to really depreciate. They might appreciate a little bit, get higher in value, but the whole goal is to say, like, you can buy this car, you can enjoy it, and then you can sell it for about what you paid. And you had a great time, and it almost cost you nothing. And the Hummer H1 was on that list. I remember thinking, like, I drove it because we had a big shoot, and they're just as crude and loud and wide as you can imagine. And I thought, yeah, maybe. I don't know who's buying these, but okay. And it turns out, based on this sale, we were really ahead of the curve on that, weren't we?
Yeah, I think a pat on the back is deserved, for you, Larry.
We called it.
Yeah, this is not a number one car. This is not the world's most excellent example. It just happens to be a low miles example. 231,000. When I looked at this, when I saw this auction, I'm thinking, this car, frankly, when you think about it, I think my number was probably between 80 and 100, something like that. Not $231,000. So I don't know what's going on here, whether this is a one-off that's not going to happen again.
Okay, let me offer a guess, okay? See if you like this. It's a diesel.
Right.
And, the diesels were kind of simple, but there is the potential that you could burn, different kinds of oil in it. And this is based on a shop. I was at this shop called AI Design in New York earlier this summer, and they had one of these H1s in there. And they were building this entire custom car with gun racks and 4 different satellite receivers and radars. And the owner was building it into the zombie apocalypse vehicle.
No, where was this shop?
In Tuckahoe, New York.
How far is that from New York City?
Oh, it's not that far, like 30 miles.
Yeah, okay. So this is the perfect New York urban assault vehicle, right? You don't have to worry. You don't have to worry about that cab running into you at a stoplight. It's not going to hurt a thing.
I just wonder if there is that desire still, kind of the prepper type desire.
Yeah.
If everything hits the fan, I'm taking my assault vehicle and I'm going to be just fine. And maybe that's part of the attraction. I don't know. It's a guess, but I don't know what else to say about a $200,000 H1.
A friend of mine who's thought this through, his zombie apocalypse. Now we both can't say it.
So people are thinking about it.
Yeah, his zombie apocalypse vehicle is a motorcycle.
Yeah.
To get him to his private jet.
Yes.
Which, by the way, he doesn't own the private jet, but it's that's his zombie apocalypse vehicle, and I kind of like that. So this would be trouble getting through those New York City streets if everybody's out in there, especially with New York drivers. So that'd be a problem. So, but we're going to be watching this one because this
watching
sale
the Hummers. You mean? Yeah.
Yeah. This sale means either something's changing or somebody was. Really, really exuberant about getting this particular H1. I can't figure it out yet, but we'll figure it out.
Okay, the last one is a personal favorite of mine. It was sold on Bring a Trailer, and it's a 1983 Honda Civic hatchback, and this is like the CVCC era. It's over
Right.
$30,000. Oh my gosh!
But hey, Larry, I put this in here for you because it's got a manual. Okay,
Yeah.
how many of these things actually had manuals?
Oh, I
I
think
don't.
most of them.
No,
Oh,
no, no,
totally.
no. No, they had that early manumatic transmission. I think the uptake rate on the automatics was well over 50% on these things. By
Well,
83 especially. I mean, these things were what? They came out in what, 75, 76 in this style, I think.
they did, yeah. And this was the car that really where Honda established its powertrain expertise, because
Yes.
all the other domestic manufacturers are layering on catalytic converters and feedback carburetors, all in a vain attempt to meet the emissions requirements. And Honda shows up with this beautifully simple system and a combustion chamber that met the requirements in a much cheaper, simpler fashion that nobody had figured out. And I think if anybody was listening when this car arrived on our shores, this was like, uh-oh, these Japanese manufacturers, they are ready to clean our clock. And so
Yeah,
this was
40
like the warning shot.
Yeah, 4,600 miles on this one, and I can't
I
imagine
don't
there's too
believe
many
it.
more with less miles. Well, I
Do
mean,
you buy
somebody
that?
believes it. Yeah, sure, why not? I mean, it was grandma's car, and it's sad. Who the hell knows?
Okay.
My dad bought one in 1976. Okay, my dad always owned Lincolns. Okay, great
Oh,
story. He always owned Lincolns, but he was concerned about the price of gas and the availability of gas, so he bought one. And of course, he bought a brown one with a white vinyl top that had all the stuff they put on
they
them
put a
back
vinyl
then.
top on it?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, the side molding, the whole thing. Dear old dad, and it was like the vinyl top was probably an additional $90 or $125, but my dad was like, I'm determined I'm going to drive this to work. I'm going to park the Lincoln. This thing gets great gas mileage. He drove it for about 3 weeks, and then it went to my sister. So,
So
but
noisy.
yeah, I know they were great cars for their time. They were just,
Yeah.
they were little tin boxes at the time, and it was. I will say, big shout out to the Honda, because where all the American manufacturers and most of the European manufacturers as well were going, let's hire more lobbyists to try and get the
Oh, the
emissions
laws changed.
controls
Yeah.
and the mileage down, or the mileage caps down, or whatever. Honda just went to work as an engineer and did the right thing, and came up with this CVCT. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, CVCC inline four, which is just a game changer and an amazing, amazing car.
30 grand. 30
I
grand.
know.
I mean,
It's clean. It's clean.
it's like paying 30 grand for it's like suddenly a Toyota Corolla is valuable, right? That's the same thing. It's like the
Uh,
lowest market car you can buy is suddenly worth a lot of money.
accident-free Carfax.
All right, I'm gonna buy one tomorrow and put it in the garage, and that's my
Okay.
retirement
No,
plan.
you need to use it. Be like my dad. Drive it for 3 weeks and give it to your daughter, right?
Well, Dave, let's move on to our kicking tires segment. This is where we talk about cars that are for sale now and will be for the next week or so. The first one I want to start with, because I need you to explain it to me, because I don't know anything about it. It's on the Hagerty marketplace. This is on the auction page. It's a 1959 Peerless GT Phase 2. Say what?
Okay. Yeah, I know. A British specialty car.
Oh,
If you kind of look at it and kind of squint a lot, you'd
Aston
say,
Martin.
is that an Aston Martin? Exactly.
Totally.
Well, it's a fiberglass Aston Martin without,
Really?
without all the accessory baggage. This one has been modified, so it has a different engine in it. I believe it has a 240Z Nissan running gear in
Oh,
it, if I'm
good,
not
good, good.
mistaken. So don't ask me what it's worth. I think it's a great looking car.
Totally.
And I mean, one of those Excederini cars that instead of coming from Italy, came from England. There's some history on this car here. There's lots of photos. It's right now at $2,100, which of course we're going to have to split this one again. It's in Greece, New York, which I have no idea where it is, but I'm thinking that's upstate somewhere. Lots of videos on this thing, a lot of descriptions on the thing. But the best part is the Peerless GT was entered in the 24 Hour of Le Mans in
No.
1958.
Get out.
Yes. They only made 325 of them, and that's just an estimate. But it's a Le Mans entry, and it did It did. It
Wow.
came in 16th overall, Larry. I
Get
mean, come on.
out. Oh
I
my
mean, this is an
gosh.
era when major manufacturers would be thrilled to get a 15, 16 finish.
Oh.
So anyhow, rare car. It does have a 74 Datsun 260Z inline six in it, which is, I'm going to say, a good thing for me, but maybe not a good thing for originality. But again, who cares? I love it. I just think it's great.
I
And
do
what an
too.
oddball car. And it's on the Hagerty marketplace. And, for rounding era money for most of I mean, if you buy a new car, your taxes are going to be $2,100. So, and it's not going to sell for that. Somebody's got to wise up and pay a lot more than that for this thing.
Oh my gosh, it's super cool. Well, I mean, they put on this 007
Yeah.
uh, stuff on it because it does sort of resemble the
Roundel.
Aston Martin. But
Yeah.
beyond that, to all the points you mentioned, a super just unique car. We don't know what it's going to get, but we expect it's going to be very reasonable money, and it has very serviceable mechanicals. It should be really reliable. Just one of those cars you could really have a lot of fun with, I think, is what we're both come to that conclusion.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, super cool. Okay, so what are you looking at? What's on your list?
Yeah. Coming up next is an 83 Porsche 928.
Uh-oh.
Now, yeah, I know this has got a little bit of a question mark with it.
These are scary cars. I owned one.
Scary to begin with. And this one is a Langenberg conversion. So it's a wide body in that wonderful 80s way. It's one of, 3 or 4 known. This is a very challenging restoration. But it's also available on, what is this, Facebook Marketplace? Yeah. Facebook Marketplace for $14,000. Now, think about it. Think about what's happened with AMG. Think about what's happened with Roof. Think about what's happened with a number of the other, specialty manufacturers. If you were to restore this car and keep it, I think this would be a car that would be a museum centerpiece someday. You still there?
Yeah.
You still there?
I don't know, Dave. I wanna support you. You're my friend, but I think you're off your rocker on this deal.
Well, I don't think I'd pay $14,000 for it. Okay, I'm just saying it's been available now for 19 weeks, which means that not too many people are as excited about it as I am. The car runs with with a gas can pouring down the. Is this thing carbureted? No, it's not. It's fuel injection. So inserted into the fuel injection somewhere. It is an actual physical car that people bought as a tuner car in 1983. And I'm just going to say it again. The tuner cars are going crazy from the 80s because of the interest in these things. It's not an AMG. I think the car looks, as we would say back in the day, totally bitching.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, if I take your side for a minute, those Koenig wide body AM or Mercedes coupes, right? Tons of interest in those. This is sort of the Miami Vice era. This has these outlandishly wide fenders to it. It's the same kind of area that was really big and, oddly in Germany, right? You sort of expect that to be a very understated conservative culture, but here they're slapping on these massive fender flares. So maybe there's something to it, but nobody knows that name. Landenberg is the problem, I think.
I think it was a department store somewhere, but yeah. Anyhow, just take a look at the pictures on the inside of this car because I love this. Yeah. Not only does it have the wired-in cell phone, it has a Blaupont Berlin radio, which is the stock radio, and you can see evidence of the person who owned this car being a smoker for well over most of its lifetime. And it's got a radar detector, all installed as you would, at the
sure,
the detail shop back in the day. So it's got absolutely nothing going for it except for all the cool accessories. It would be fun maybe to find a better 928 and do the transplant of the body panels if you wanted to do that and make your own. Who the hell knows? I think it's great. I'm crazy. So
what's it for sale? What are they asking for?
$14,000, and it's been for sale for, what did I say, 19 weeks at $14,000.
So you get it for $5,000. What's your lowest cash offer?
Well, I was thinking 4, but yeah, exactly. But
it's a manual 928. Yeah, I just remember. The one I had, Dave, I had one for a brief second because somebody was selling. I think I bought it for $2,000, and it didn't have any rust.
I would definitely show up at this guy's place with 40 $100 bills. That's what I would do. And, whatever. It's just me. I mean, the guy's probably not going to take any less than whatever his number is, but it's an automatic, by the way. So you'd have to do a transplant with the transmission.
Oh, I see. Yeah, the horror of these cars is the complexity.
It's unbelievable.
The one I had, something wasn't working right, and I had to go to the fuse box, and it's in the passenger footwell.
Yeah, where it could never get wet, right?
Right. So you take this panel off, and I mean, I wish you could have seen my face when I took the panel off and I revealed this electrical nightmare. It was a 1.5 foot long fuse and relay box, and I was like, "Oh my god!" And so you have to trace the wiring when something's not working, as long as you know the relay is working. So I took out the fuse box and looked behind it. All the wires were the same color. Because usually you can trace it. This is a blue wire. It's like, oh my god, what did I do?
You have no business being here if you don't know how the wiring works, right?
Yes, you stupid American. Yes, of course. Okay, good luck to whoever lands that gem. This is a car I'm really pining for, Dave. It's. I just saw it this morning. It's right now for sale on Bring a Trailer. It's a 1988 BMW M3. Of course, that is the motorsports version of the 330, or they call it 325 series BMW. This was the ultimate yuppie mobile. The motorsport version they modified to make it really competitive in the European touring car series of the era. So they flared the fenders. It got this special motorsports. They call it S14 four-cylinder engine with about 190 horsepower. There are so many videos of the racing from that era that was really close. They're jumping curves. I've wanted one of these cars forever. I'm priced. I can't afford them, but something like this is like right in my zone. Man, what I mean by that is it's so kind of hacked up. Somebody did it when these things were cheap, that now I don't think many people are going to be interested in this car because it's got all these decals on it. A lot of the interior is removed, but it's not a full race car with a cage. It's just sort of weird in-betweener. It doesn't really fit anywhere. So I'm going to be watching this thing. Do you understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's a track car. It's a race car. I get it. It's, Larry, you can be the opening bid. There's no bid on this. I assume that when you got up and you sleepless night last night at 4:00 and you turned on the computer, you found this because it had just gone on Bring a Trailer, right? So
I have an alert.
You can own this. You can put $1,000 bid on this, and you can own it for at least 15 minutes until somebody comes out and and beat you on it. But it's a hell of a lot of car. Not something that winds my watch. So I get it, but
it's just so hard to prove what the right price is.
Yeah.
And this is one of those.
It's also in Ontario, so you got to bring it back over the border. So
I don't know. It doesn't say this is a no reserve. So then there's a reserve on. I would have told the owner that this is probably a better no reserve auction, right? And what I mean by that is,
I would agree.
I sort of learned that when I just sold my Mustang on the Hagerty marketplace. They said, look, just do no reserve because it's telling the audience this car will sell. And that just sort of increases the excitement around it and gets people more likely to bid. And I didn't really know if I bought that, but now I do. Do you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, know that you're bidding to own the car rather than bidding to stroke the ego of the seller. So, that's a big deal right there. So, it's already got 1,000 views. It has 250 watchers, and this thing, I guess, just started. The auction just started on this. So, ends in 7 days from today, and today's the 15th. So, do the math on it. This is your car. You deserve this car, Larry.
I totally do. I've worked hard, Dave.
You should take the Mustang money and put it all in this car right now. Just bid what you sold the Mustang for right now. You'll probably own it.
I'm going to do that. That's a good idea. Okay, yeah, thank you for that advice. But again,
really, don't give your wife my cell phone number.
I find it fascinating, these little niches within a market, because a really good E30 M3 is a 6-figure car. Mm-hmm. And this car is not going to get close to that, in my view. But what is the right price? And if it had been a no reserve auction, you really would let the market decide, because the market really is what decides the price, not what you wish you could get for it. So I guess we'll see if the owner is really serious about selling this thing. But Dave, I wanted you to know a little bit about me. I wanted you to know what really moves the needle for me, and this car kind of ticks all those boxes. So Christmas is coming up. I know you're Big Papa. Big Papa's got deep pockets. Do what you can for me, all right?
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. If you buy me the 928, I'll put a bid on this one for you. How's that?
Done. No.
Yeah.
Not just a bid, Dave. That's not committing.
not going to go from my $4,000 car to this thing. So.
Okay, what are you looking forward to?
Let's see. I guess the next thing is we've got a car coming up at Kansas City at Mecum at the a GT500, which winds my watch, a 70 GT500
Mustang.
Yeah, Shelby.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's a neat car because it's red, which is, I know everybody goes they don't want competition red. I do. 428, 435 horsepower GT500, which I think is the one to have. White interior, which of course is a real 70s thing, impossible to keep clean in the real world. They say it's restored. It's not my kind of restoration. I mean, I think there's still things that need to be done. Well, look, you just have to scroll through the pictures and you'll find some stuff that did not get done. So somebody spent a lot of money getting stuff done, but they didn't finish it up.
Like what?
Okay, so look, if you look on the roll bar, which is really not a roll bar, what do they call them when they're not roll bars?
The safety hoop on the inside.
Yeah, safety hoop on the inside. The first thing that sticks out to me is the fact that the little hooks on it have rust. That's not what you do on a restored car. So,
wow, I'm seeing that. Fascinating.
Yeah, so I mean, that's what we look for when we're looking at cars to see how much money was spent on them.
So wait, we could zero in on that. So that detail tells you that the restoration potentially was a quickie job and not the careful, I'm going to get everything right job.
Well, let's talk about restorations for a minute. One man's trip to the car wash is a restoration for one guy, and one guy's complete nut and bolt disassembly for $250,000 is a restoration for the next guy. So restoration is one of those sliding scale words that always gets people caught out on these things. But that's what you look for. You look for, why do they call them a detailer? Because you're looking for the details on the car. And so you want to make sure that everything is factory or the way you'd want it or whatever. So I think those points are really what you go for. So I wouldn't call this, I mean, you can call it a restored car and that's fine, but this is not like some frame off thing where somebody spent $280,000. If the boot doesn't fit well enough when you're taking the pictures on the car, that tells you something else too. So
this was a driver quality restoration.
I would think so. Yeah. Look at the door sill plates. Look at the scratches on the door sill plates. I mean, all those things are right there. And those door sill plates are available.
And that's all fine. You just have to know so you don't pay perfect prices, right?
Yeah, I don't think this car is going to sell for perfect money. I think it'll sell for good money when you consider that the Hagerty Price Guide has a number 4 at 124 and a number 1, which is the best car in the world, at 254. I don't think this car is going to get anywhere near 250. But, that's what auctions are about. We can wait and see. There could be two people who say, I want that car.
So interesting, because usually there's a much bigger gap. A number 4 car is, explain what you mean by number. That's a condition. And it's 1 through 5. Number 4 means it's just one step away from a parts car, right?
Well, yeah, actually kind of 2 steps away from a parts car. But yeah, it's still a number 4 is a still drivable car. There's going to be excuses you have to make. Yeah, the fender needs repaint. Yeah, I had to put the shield seats in because I couldn't find the original seats. And in this particular car, I painted the hood black in the place I wanted it painted black, but not the place it came from the factory. So, that cuts down on condition. You can't have a number 1 that has excuses. Number 2 is a really, really, really good car that people would think would be the best car in the world, but your car friends will tell you, no, this is wrong and this needs doing and this shouldn't have been done. So, it all flows through that way.
So a number 4 is what'd you say, 120, and a number 1's 250?
Yeah, exactly.
It would cost you way more than 100 to get a number 4 up to a number 1. So then your only option is to buy the number 1 or 2, I would say. Right?
I love buying a number 1 that's been driven down to a number 2. I love buying a former show car that somebody decided, to hell with it. I want to put miles on it. And they've got 7,000, 8,000, 14,000 miles on a number 1. That's the car you want to buy. That is the car you want to focus on.
Well, it's also, I also like this thing because it's sort of, just looking at it visually, you could tell it's straddling 2 eras, the 60s and like the later 70s, because it's just kind of it's got a lot of cool details, but it's not a really harmonic design. It looks a little disjointed to me, which is one of the reasons I'm surprised the price is so high, especially considering at this point, Shelby was not really building these cars. It was Ford using the name, building them in Michigan, right?
You always have to rain on people's parade, don't you? I mean, come on.
We're here to educate, Dave. This is straight
absolutely
dope.
Right. And was it 69s that got retitled as 70s? I think that's what it was. That got released as 70s. I believe, everybody thinks that their car, great stories. Cobras, for example, 427s, 289s. They couldn't give them away towards the end of production. They were on dealer lots. They were just sitting there. They weren't practical. People weren't buying them. But now, of course, you're talking about $1 million car. Same thing with the Shelbys. They had a whole bunch that were left over. So I believe the 69s became 70s. It might be 70s became 71s. I didn't get my Shelby hat on early enough this morning to remember that. They sold well, but they didn't shake the earth. I had a chemistry teacher in high school who owned one of these things. He owned a coupe, not a convertible, in green with no air conditioning. I remember that. And he was the coolest teacher in the school because of that. I mean, what a great car to have.
Well, let's see what happens. I want to move on to a really great kind of bookend to this episode. It's our last one, and it also is a great car. If we think about that in 1964 Imperial we talked about earlier, this is a car for sale on Hagerty Marketplace. It's at auction. It's already got a bid of $10,000. And just how different the design is. It's a 1961 Cadillac 62 convertible. I don't know much about these cars. It doesn't look like these huge boat Cadillacs, but has all that really cool Cadillac styling to it. What do you want to tell us about these?
Well, plenty of chrome, that's for sure. What I can tell you is that Hagerty Price Guide gives a number 4 value of $78,900. I'm sorry, a number 1. Wait a minute. Number 1 value of $78,900, a number 4 of $22,500. Now, you'd have to have a friend in the chrome business if you needed to rechrome this car. I don't think it needs it. These cars, it's part of what's called the Ferguson collection, and these cars are advertised as having been sitting for quite some time. And they're in Leesburg, Indiana, and this is being done by Broad Arrow in conjunction with the Hagerty Marketplace auctions. So it's got just a great looking car, and this is the bid your own price special because not having been run, not having been on the road, there's going to be issues, but it's a big American car, and the issues probably aren't going to be that great, in my humble opinion. But this car's got all the
hard to rectify.
Exactly. Right? This car's got all the looks. It's got the great the turbo fan, wheels on it, all that sort of stuff. I'm making that up. That's not the General Motors name.
It's cool.
It does not have the bucket seats, which I would have loved to have seen, but it does have the split bench. And great car. These are fun cars for the money. Talk about presence. I mean, you live in Miami Beach, you can take it to the club. You live in L.A., you can drive it down Melrose. You live in the Midwest, you can drive it anywhere you want. You're going to have fun with it.
I think it's an ideal project. It looks to me like
a lot of money was spent on this car. You can tell just looking under the hood. I mean, anything that's wrong with it went wrong because of the sitting, not because of the way it was put together. Again, in my humble opinion.
I mean, it looks cosmetically like fantastic. So whatever things you're going to rectify is mechanical, which is not that hard on these.
Yeah, it's a high number 3 car, I would say. Maybe a low number 2, but it just needs some time and attention. Winter's coming up. You need a project. That's it.
It's still got the extravagant design with those big fins of the 50s era cars, but it's in a more compact package. So
this is really kind of
cool.
straddling the 50s and 60s here, and I couldn't agree more. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Well, good luck to everybody who bids, and good luck to the seller. Dave, we're coming up. The next Thanksgiving's coming up next week. I'm just thinking about that BMW M3 with the holidays coming up and what you're going to do for me. But beyond that, is there anything else you want to add before I wish you and your family a happy Thanksgiving?
I would say that, if you buy that car, I'll pay for the turkey, okay, at your house, okay?
Well, a broader question. What happens during the holiday times? Everything just kind of slows down, or is it people have time to bid and they're just sitting around?
No, things do slow down, but it's a great time to be looking at cars. I mean, keep in mind that when Uncle Fred and Aunt Harry come over, and somebody else in the family has to deal with talking to them, you can get on your device and search cars. I think that's some of the
Right.
some of the days I think that classifieds, online classifieds get hit the most are Christmas and Thanksgiving weekend when something else is going on or other things are going on. So. Yeah, I'll be in London next time we talk in
How
a
very
couple of weeks.
un-American of you, Dave, but go
Yeah,
ahead.
I know. What can I say? But we're celebrating Thanksgiving here at home. Don't worry about that.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for listening. I hope you and your family have a wonderful holiday. Please catch us next time on No Reserve.